In the headlines, Pope Francis arrives in Korea for the first papal visit to the country in a quarter century. He emphasizes the importance of dialogue in achieving peace. The Bank of Korea cuts the key rate for the first time in 15 months in a shift from its hawkish policy stance, going along with the government's drive for growth. And North Korea fires short-range projectiles into the East Sea on Thursday in two separate rounds, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. Welcome to Primetime News, live from Seoul. I'm Kang Tae-ri.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us tonight. Pope Francis started his 5-day visit to South Korea on this Thursday to kick off his Asia tour.
And in the first meeting with President Park Geun-hye, the Pope, known for his affection for the divided Koreas, called for more dialogue, patience, and understanding between the two Koreas. Choi You-sun starts us off.
On the first day of his much-publicized visit to South Korea, Pope Francis called on the two Koreas to put down their display of force and be patient in trying to forgive and understand each other.
Peace is not simply the absence of war, but the work of justice. And justice, as a virtue, calls for the discipline of forbearance.
The pontiff, who has publicly prayed for peace and reconciliation on the divided Korean peninsula, added justice demands a will for mutually beneficial goals and building foundations of mutual respect. Recognizing efforts for stability in the South, Pope Francis said such efforts were close to his heart as they affect the stability of the entire world. President Park, who back in March proposed increasing humanitarian aid to the north and people-to-people exchanges between the two sides to better prepare for reunification, said Pyongyang, for its part, should lay down its nuclear arms.
이제 남북한 주민들이 전쟁과 핵 위협에서 벗어나 함께 행복을 누리고 세계의 평화와 인류 번영에도 기여하는 통일을 이루려면 수많은 생명을 한꺼번에 앗아갈 수 있는 북한의 핵무기 개발부터 중단되어야 할 것입니다.
She then asked the Pope to continue praying for those in conflict to forgive, those divided to unite, and for Koreans to work towards a unified Korea. Pope Francis, who is dedicated to the society's marginalized and those in suffering, said not meeting their immediate needs, but assisting with their human and cultural advancement should be the main goal. With peace and reconciliation high on the minds of Koreans during the Pope's visit, it will be interesting to see what message President Park will have for North Korea and Japan Friday, marking the peninsula's liberation from Japan's colonial rule. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
Korea is, of course, very much excited about the Holy Father's visit, and attention is on the messages that he will convey throughout his stay. Pope Francis has always shown a great interest in the marginalized and the poor, and he will certainly continue with those efforts during his time here. Park Ji-won has more.
This is Pope Francis' third overseas visit since his inauguration in March last year. And in the previous two, the Pope made a point to reach out to those who are suffering and are marginalized. When he visited Brazil July last year, he visited a shanty town where he urged social justice. During his visit to the Middle East in May, he made an impromptu trip to a wall that divides Israel from the West Bank, praying for peace. They are messages the Pope is likely to convey during his time in Korea as well.
As Korea is at the center of conflicts, the theme of the Mass will be peace and reconciliation.
The leader of the Catholic Church will also deliver a message of hope to the youth at the 6th Asian Youth Day, a gathering of Catholic young people from 29 Asian countries.
Arise, young people in Asia, the glory of martyrs is shining upon you.
The Pope will also meet with people who are suffering, including former Korean victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery during World War II, as well as survivors and the bereaved families of victims from April's ferry disaster. He has also reached out to workers who have been laid off from Sangyong Motor, residents from Gangjang Village in Jeju Island who stand against the government's decision to build a naval base on the island, and residents of Miryang in the south of the country who lost their homes over the construction of electrical transmission towers. All have been invited to a Mass for Peace and Reconciliation on Monday, where Pope Francis is expected to deliver a message on healing and social justice. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
So all eyes are on Pope Francis and the events he'll be attending across the nation. But how will the Pope move around? Where will he stay? And what will he be wearing? Our Kim Min-ji gives us a rundown of some of these particular details.
The Vatican's made it a custom to take charter planes en route to foreign countries and depart on local airlines. And that's why Pope Francis, who flew in via an Alitalia Airlines Airbus A330, is flying on a Boeing 777 from Korean Airlines on his way back. The Pope Mobile in Korea this time is Kia Motors' compact model, the Seoul. Pope Mobiles have often been luxurious and bulletproof throughout the years. But true to his reputation as a humble man, Pope Francis insisted on using the smallest Korean-made car possible. For air travel, he will be using President Park Geun-hye's presidential helicopter, a Sikorsky S-92. And we can witness his humble nature once again from where he's staying during the trip, the Vatican Embassy in Seoul. About 20 square meters in size, his room will be equipped with only the necessities, a bed, wardrobe, and table. And his wardrobe is filled with messages. On the 15th, Pope Francis will be wearing a white robe with the letters A and M, which stand for Ave Maria. And for the Beatification Mass the next day, a red robe representing the blood of martyrs. And on the final day, a dress with a dove and olive symbolizing peace and salvation. Pope Francis is visiting 13 locations and attending 11 official events in this visit that will come to a total of 98.5 hours. He is traveling 1,000 kilometers within the country. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And to talk more about this first papal visit in Korea in a quarter of a century, Father Ramiro Zuniga from the Guadalupe Missioners is joining us here in the studio. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
So did you ever expect the Pope would come to Korea?
I expect one day he will visit, but not as soon as he is doing now.
So what can we read into this visit to Korea by the Pope? What meaning does it have for Koreans? What meaning does it have for the Vatican?
Okay, as you know, it is now holding Asia Youth Day, and he likes youth. And he tried to speak all the time to youth people to give them hope. And now that they are meeting in Korea, and the Korean church is getting ready for the beatification of 124 martyrs, then he said it's a good time to come, and he prepared everything, and he's here with us.
So we already saw his message of peace communicated through his joint press conference with President Park Geun-hye, but what other messages are you really focused on that the Pope will deliver during his visit here in Korea? And what kind of dialogue or conversation should we as Koreans really have with the Pope?
Okay, first is hope. Hope in that we can make a society different as we are doing now. As you know, many people is getting down. The people that is getting good jobs and good money is enjoying the life. But we are forgetting some people that is not so lucky. And then he's saying that we cannot go and forget those people.
Okay, and some are saying Asia will be a big focus of this papacy and this trip because this region offers a great potential for the Catholic Church, given that just about 12% of the global Catholic community lives in Asia. Do you think he will be speaking to the entire region, not just for Korea this time?
Of course, of course, of course. As you know, the Catholic Church is a universal church, and he comes to Asia for the first time, not only for Koreans. As they are coming here to see him, he is talking to all of us, not only to Asian. All the world is listening his word. Then he's here for Korea, from Korea to the world, to the Asia.
He'll be traveling a lot, meeting a lot of people, and visiting all these different places. What part of his visit are you looking forward to seeing the most?
Okay, so I am planning to go to Kotongne. As you know, he will meet there the religious in Korea, and I will go there. I hope I can see him.
And from some of the work that you do here in Seoul, can you tell us about how your missionary is really working on the Pope's message of hope and changing society?
Okay, we are all Mexicans, means Latin American, as the Pope is himself. And we are here working with people since 52 years. We started to work in Korea, and we try to live the same. We say simplicity and the happiness and hope that we can have a better world.
All right, Father Zuniga, thank you so much for joining us here tonight and sharing your insight.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Kerry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Che-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Well, as widely anticipated, Korea's central bank has cut its key rate by 1/4 percentage point after holding it steady for the last 14 months.
That's right, and this move is in line with the Korean government's expansionary policy aimed at boosting the Korean economy, facing threats of further slowdown. And for more, our Hwang Ji joins us from the News Center. Fill us in, Ji-hye.
Well, the Bank of Korea lowered its key interest rate to 2.25% today, and that marks the first rate cut by the central bank since May last year. It cited the sluggish domestic demand brought on by the ferry disaster in April and the business and consumer sentiment that continues to worsen. The central bank's move comes after the government unveiled a set of aggressive stimulus measures last month, including additional fiscal spending of roughly $11.5 billion. Governor Lee Ju-yeol says the cut is a preemptive measure to stop the economy from slowing further while inflationary pressure is low.
The rate cut, together with the government stimulus measures, is expected to improve consumer sentiment and contribute to maintaining growth momentum.
All right, so Gia, there seems to have been a little bit of compromise on the side of Bank of Korea, despite the growing concerns about the independence of the central bank and that the rate cut could worsen the nation's household debt problem. What did the governor have to say about that?
Sean, the governor defended the Bank of Korea's neutrality, saying it does not make decisions that run counter to their assessments of current economic conditions, although he actually admitted that the rate cut will lead to more household debt, which currently stands at roughly $980 billion. He said the level is manageable for now and that we should not focus on the total amount of debt. Instead, he said the focus should be on how fast the debt level is growing compared to that of income. And that's also why the market expects further rate cuts down the road.
Which means that if this rate cut does not boost the consumption, we'll likely get another rate cut from the BOK. And we think that another rate cut will likely come by the end of this year.
All right, so another rate cut by the end of this year. We'll be certainly watching that one. All right, thank you very much, Ji-hye. That was our Hwang Ji reporting live from the News Center. North Korea still hasn't given an answer to South Korea's offer of dialogue. Instead, the regime has upped its threats, calling on Seoul to cancel an upcoming joint military exercise with Washington and to lift sanctions on Pyongyang. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Without giving a response to South Korea's recent proposal for talks, North Korea on Thursday laid out specific measures Seoul should take to improve inter-Korean ties. In a statement, the North's agency in charge of inter-Korean relations called on the South to cancel the Ulchi Freedom Guardian military exercises with the United States, saying that a failure to do so would push the Korean peninsula to the brink of war. The annual military drills, which Pyongyang calls practice for an invasion, are scheduled to begin August 18th. The Committee for Peaceful Reunification of Korea urged the South to remove what they said were unreasonable institutional mechanisms blocking the contact, visits, cooperation, and exchange between the North and the South, a reference to a set of sanctions imposed on Pyongyang following the sinking of the South Korean warship Cheonan in 2010. An official at South Korea's Unification Ministry said the ministry does not feel the need to address such demands by the North, and said Pyongyang should accept Seoul's proposal for talks if it really wants improved inter-Korean ties. South Korea proposed high-level talks next Tuesday to discuss a range of pending issues, including a possible round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Although the North remains tight-lipped on the offer, it did note the South Korean government should demonstrate its desire for improved ties through practical actions rather than in words. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry clarified America's Asia-Pacific strategy on his latest around-the-world tour. The top diplomat says the U.S. does not and will not take sides in any of the maritime conflicts that have gripped the Asia region in recent years. Connie Lee reports.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made it clear that improving U.S. cooperation with China was important to maintain stability in the Asia-Pacific region. Speaking on Asia policy at the East-West Center in Honolulu on Wednesday, Kerry also mentioned that the U.S. does not take positions on the territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas. In light of the sovereignty questions, he stated that the U.S. firmly opposes the use of intimidation or force to assert a claim. Kerry reiterated instead that all parties must work together to solve the claims through peaceful means. He continued to say that these principles bind all nations equally, and all nations have a responsibility to uphold them. Kerry also strongly emphasized that the U.S. will continue to work toward promoting human rights and democracy in Asia. He specifically mentioned that the concentration camps in North Korea should be shut down immediately.
Such deprivation of human dignity just has no place in the 21st century. North Korea's gulag should be shut down, not tomorrow, not next week, but now.
He added that Pyongyang's proliferation activities pose a serious threat to the United States and to the world. Kerry's speech in Honolulu wrapped up an 8-day around-the-world diplomatic tour, which included the ASEAN and East Asia summit meetings. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Korea's Incheon International Airport, which routinely tops global lists as one of the best in the world, is celebrating a milestone. The number of passengers that have passed through the airport since it opened in 2001 has surpassed 400 million thanks to increased networks overseas. More than 80 airlines fly in and out of Incheon to more than 190 cities around the world. And it's reportedly building another terminal that will be able to accommodate 62 million passengers and around 6 tons of cargo each year.
A fresh ceasefire has gone into effect over the Gaza Strip following a last-minute agreement between Israel and Palestinian militant groups in Cairo.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, the shaky truce in Gaza has been extended again, but there's been reports of both sides trading fire. Is that right?
Well, just as this new ceasefire was announced late Wednesday, Israel launched airstrikes in response to at least 5 rockets, which they allege were shot in their direction as the deadline approached. Israeli Defense Forces said they were targeting what it called terror sites in Gaza, while Hamas is denying any responsibility for the attacks. It's still unclear what impact, if any, this violence will have on the 5-day truce, which continues to hold so far, following indirect negotiations in Cairo.
In the final moments, it was agreed to extend the ceasefire for 5 more days. It will end on Monday. The Palestinian delegation will leave tomorrow morning for consultations with President Mahmoud Abbas and with the Palestinian leadership.
The Palestinians said they were hopeful that a final agreement on a longer peace term would be reached in the coming weeks. A senior Israeli official said Tel Aviv would honor the unconditional ceasefire, but cast a doubt that Hamas would do the same. And moving to the latest flashpoint in the Ukraine crisis, heavy shelling has been reported in the eastern city of Donetsk as fighting between government forces and rebel fighters continues to batter the war-torn region. This as a large Russian convoy of some 260 trucks is heading towards the highly tense Ukrainian border. Moscow says the trucks contain food, water, and generators for the civilian population that's been caught in a humanitarian crisis over the past 4 months. Kiev claims the convoy is being used as a pretext to send military supplies to the rebels, who now appear to be on the verge of defeat. Ukraine has threatened to block the convoy unless the aid is inspected and distributed by the Red Cross and other international monitors. And Canada has announced it will donate its majority supply of experimental Ebola vaccine for use in Africa as international health authorities continue efforts to stem the spread of the deadly virus. Ottawa's health ministry said Wednesday it would send up to 1,000 doses of the vaccine while keeping a small amount for domestic research and clinical trials. Meanwhile, Liberia has received its first batch of the experimental drug ZMapp from the U.S. However, government officials remain skeptical of its effectiveness for a long-term solution.
We need to continue our contact tracing, our surveillance system. We need to continue the health promotion. We need to continue the mechanisms that will break transmission so that we eradicate this disease.
The current Ebola epidemic is the world's largest and deadliest, killing so far over 1,000 people, mainly in West Africa. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
And welcome to sports. Now starting things off with the Asian Games in Incheon. The Korea Football Association has released its 20-man roster for the Asian Games. The football tournament at the Games is open to players under the age of 23, but each country can name up to 3 wildcards. All eyes were on the 3 spots as South Korea's ace Son Heung-min could not be released from Bayer Leverkusen. And for the wildcard, Ulsan Hyundai's giant striker Kim Shin-wook and goalkeeper Kim Seung-gyu were selected, as well as Minsk midfielder Park Ju-ho. Now let's head over to the Women's FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Toronto. South Korea played against Mexico, their last Group C opponent, needing a win to advance to the quarterfinals. In the 43rd minute, Lee Geun-min, with her right foot, shoots straight into the net, gaining the lead. Lee So-dam also scored in the 63rd minute with a penalty, creating a comfortable 2-0 lead. Mexico comes back hard 10 minutes later and scores, but Korea holds on to the lead for a final score, 2-1. Korea will next play France on Monday. Now moving on to KBO action, let's head over to the Mokdong Stadium in Seoul, where the Tusan Bears and the Nexon Heroes are battling it out. Starting pitchers in the game, Yanuski Maya for the Tusan Bears and Kim Dae-woo for the Nexon Heroes. Now Nexon gets on board first, Hugyeon Chan at bat, smashes the ball to the right, back, and it's out of here for a solo home run. Not done yet in the bottom of the second, Kang Jung-ho drills the pitch. See ya! Nexon up 2-0. It's a home run festival. This time, Lee Tae-geun in the 3rd inning puts his 2 cents for a 2-run shot to take a 4-0 lead. Nexon dominates throughout the match. Final score 8-2. Checking out other games, Lotte beats Hana 9-4. Samsung beats SK in a tight race 2-1. All right, finishing things off with men's tennis, Roger Federer places his name in the world record books for all-time wins in the Masters Series. Federer beats Canada's Vasek Pospisil at the Western and Southern Open in Cincinnati Wednesday, claiming his 3rd 100th Master Series win. He is the first tennis players to reach the 300 mark on the APT Tour. Trailing closely behind are Rafael Nadal with 281 and Novak Djokovic with 220 wins. That wraps it up. This has been Kim Hyun-bin. Stay tuned to updates from the world of sports.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather update. Now tomorrow is Liberation Day here in Korea and more rain is in the forecast with light drizzles in Seoul while heavy showers are expected down south. Now some southern regions will get up to 60 millimeters of precipitation while upper regions, however, may see between 5 to 30. Now, it looks like wet conditions will hang around throughout Pope Francis's visit, although a clear sunny day is ahead on Saturday just in time for the beatification ceremony. Now, going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will top out the Friday morning at 22 before reaching up to 30 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will both top out at 26 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops over to 27, Dokdo hits 23, while Mount Kumgang tops into the mid-20s. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
And that's Primetime News. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Che-ri. We'll see you again on Monday. Enjoy the long weekend. Bye-bye.